On the morning of the 4th of July 1989, a lone Soviet Union MiG-23 fighter left its base in Poland and headed west. Its course would fly over Soviet East Germany before crossing over the Iron Curtain into West Germany. After passing through Dutch airspace, it entered Belgium and was on a course towards Lille in France when it fell from the sky and crashed into the Belgian countryside. This story is remarkable enough, but even more so when you discover that this Soviet fighter did not have a pilot on board. It was flying itself. During the summer of 1989, the Cold War between East and West was reaching its final days, but the work of the Soviet Air Force continued as it always had done. On the morning of the 4th of July, close to the Polish city of Kolobrzeg, sits the Soviet Bagich Air Base. Climbing on board his single-seat MiG-23 fighter is Colonel Nikolai Skoridin. Colonel Skoridin was an experienced pilot with the Soviet Air Force, and having just returned from holiday, was tasked with taking this particular aircraft out for a test flight. The MiG-23, NATO codename Flogger, is a single-seat third-generation variable geometry fighter bomber, which entered service with the Soviet Air Force in 1970. Powered by a single afterburning turbojet, it was capable of speeds up to Mach 2.3 and had a combat range of 1,500 kilometers, that's 930 miles, in a standard fit, which could be extended to 2,550 kilometers, 1,580 miles, with the addition of external drop tanks. During its time in service with the Soviet Union, as well as other international operators, it was developed into several variants, and this particular aircraft was a MiG-23M variant, designed as an air superiority fighter. Shortly after 9 AM, Skoridin was given his clearance from air traffic control to taxi out to the west-facing runway 25. At this stage, all appeared normal with the MiG, and it was lined up ready for takeoff. And following takeoff clearance, Colonel Skoridin advanced his throttle and engaged full afterburner, releasing 27,500 pounds of thrust. At 9:14 AM, the MiG-23 left the runway on a heading of 250 degrees and began climbing out. But just 29 seconds later, a major problem. The afterburner failed and Skoridin experienced a dramatic loss of thrust, and his aircraft was beginning to lose height. As he had only climbed to an altitude of a mere 500 feet, Skoridin had to think fast. Thinking that he was experiencing total engine failure and with the ground coming up to meet him, he decided to abandon his aircraft and he pulled the ejection handle, firing him clear. As he landed safely in his parachute, he looked towards his stricken MiG, expecting to see it hit the ground or the nearby Baltic Sea. Rather than see a fireball of destruction, he was shocked to see the MiG still flying, and in fact continuing to climb out in a stable flight. The afterburner may have failed, but the engine itself, it was still running and performing normally. The autopilot had engaged and was holding the aircraft steady, and it was flying west. The MiG-23 was now on a direct course for leaving Polish airspace and entering that of the former East Germany, still a part of the Soviet Union, and so as yet no international incident with NATO had occurred. During its flight across East Germany, it climbed further, up to an altitude of some 40,000 feet and a speed of 380 knots, that's 700 kilometers per hour or 430 miles per hour. The fighter was still in a stable flight with plenty of fuel and was heading straight for the Iron Curtain divide between the Soviet Union and NATO. Within minutes, the MiG-23 would be over West Germany. In the Netherlands, at the Soesterberg Air Base, the 32nd Tactical Fighter Squadron of the United States Air Force were having a barbecue in celebration of Independence Day, when the scramble alert sounded. The pilotless MiG had entered West Germany, close to the town of Dannenberg, and had been detected by NATO radar systems. As a result, at 9:42, two McDonnell Douglas F-15C aircraft were scrambled to intercept the invader. And at 10:02, the two F-15 pilots came alongside the MiG-23, and they could not believe what they were seeing.
No pilot, the canopy is missing. The plane is flying autonomous, no pilot, no canopy. the ejection seat is missing from the airplane, so I will confirm the pilot appears to have ejected before the intercept occurred.
Staying close, the F-15s followed the aircraft on its journey towards Dutch airspace and the probable flight path towards Belgium and possibly France thereafter. By now, an international crisis was developing, with the governments and air forces of West Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium and France all on alert. With the MiG now flying through Dutch airspace, and due to the increasing density of populations beneath the flight path, the decision was taken not to shoot down the aircraft, due to the very real likelihood of a disaster on the ground. It was instead decided that the best course of action was to follow it over Belgium, out over the North Sea, and shoot it down there. Unfortunately, this plan was not to be put into action, because as the MiG was overflying Belgium, its fuel supply finally became exhausted. Once the fuel-starved engine shut down, the MiG slowly began to descend as it lost airspeed, still holding a steady heading of 240 degrees. The two F-15 pilots followed it closely, and looking ahead they were frantically trying to predict where it would crash, and if need be, whether to use a Sparrow missile to down the jet before it reached any dense population areas.
A gradual descent, I think it's out of gas, flamed out, just coming down on autopilot. Still heading 240. A pretty populated area is coming up in front of it. I don't know, if it goes uncontrolled, we're going to have to take it out fast, or I might end up using a Sparrow on them.
Eventually they realised that the MiG would avoid a major city centre that was coming up ahead, and instead it was headed for farmland in the town of Kortrijk, when the altitude finally ran out. The MiG-23 crashed.
Crashed just to the left of a farmhouse, right off of a highway.
Tragically, although the MiG had come down in rural farmland, it had crashed directly onto a farmhouse, destroying it totally. And inside the farmhouse was a single occupant, 18-year-old Wim Delière, who was killed instantly. Immediately following the incident, the furious governments of Belgium, the Netherlands and West Germany lodged a formal protest to the Soviet government. Despite the length of time from Colonel Skurydin ejecting from his aircraft to the point of crashing, the Soviets had remained silent and made no attempt to alert their NATO counterparts that one of their fighters was headed for NATO territory. 2 days later, on the 6th of July, the Soviets finally made a public statement on the incident. Colonel Skurydin made a personal apology to the family of Wim Delière for the loss of their son. And at the same time, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev also made a statement expressing his sorrow and regret for the incident. He also agreed to pay compensation equivalent to 625,000 euros, the majority of which was paid to the Delière family. Due to the thawing of relations between the United States, NATO and the Soviet Union, the incident was very quickly forgotten, and an international crisis was avoided. Had this incident happened a decade or so earlier, at the height of the Cold War, things may have ended up somewhat differently. Of course, for the Delière family, this date in 1989 will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching. Please take a moment to hit the like button and consider subscribing.